Everyone, welcome to my report in Ed 711 Instructional Materials and Development. So, this is the second topic for the first round of report in this subject. So, my topic is all about the historical overview of instructional materials development and the role of instructional materials in teaching and learning. So let's go first to the historical overview of instructional materials development. So the first that was created in 1900s to 1930. This was called the visual instruction movement. So in the early part of the 20th century, when school museums, the equivalent of district-wide media center, came to existence, most of the media housed in school museums were visual media such as photographs, slides, and films. So you can see it as reflected in the photos on the right side. So the increasing interest in using visual media in education was referred to as the visual instruction movement. So in 1913, Thomas Edison envisioned that school system would be completely changed with visual media in the next 10 years, proclaiming that books will soon be obsolete in schools and it is possible to teach every branch of human knowledge with the motion of picture. Okay, so these pictures were on year 1900s to 1930. As you can see there, they're using the um, traditional media, multimedia type. The next one, in the 1930 and 1940, the audiovisual instruction movement was created. So as media began incorporating sound in 1920s, the visual instruction movement was expanded to the audiovisual instruction movement. Radio gained a great deal of attention, but it had little impact on instructional practices due to various factors including poor equipment, poor reception of radio signals, and teacher resistance to change. The audiovisual instruction movement continued to evolve despite the adverse economic effects of the Great Depression, which began in 1929. The Department of Visual Instruction, which was part of the National Education Association at the time and is now called Association for Educational Communication and Technology, was formed in 1932. So as you can see in the photos reflected, there the girl was listening to the radio. It was the radio broadcasting was a significant means of instruction in 1930s. And then the second picture, the device was called a pathoscope. This is a sound film projector wherein you're going to reflect yours or project um, videos, very limited videos on screen. Next, in the 1940s and 1950s, the systematic development of instructional design was made. So in 1940s marked the beginning of instructional design, urgent need to train military personnel during World War II through the creation and distribution of training films and other instructional tools such as simulations. Several researchers and others assisted in the development of materials designed for the military. So media slides, slide projector, instructional films, simulation programs such as flight simulators to train military personnel. So in this time, they already began incorporating audiovisual or projectors, visuals, and video films in order to train their military personnel for the war in 1939 to 1945. So in 1950s to 1960s, the program instructional movement was created. So it was B.F. Skinner's instrumental in the movement of improvement human learning through program instruction. This learning cycle focused on the breakdown of instructional material into small steps, frequent questions, immediate feedback, and self-pacing. Data was collected and necessary revisions were made to improve instruction. This empirical approach would influence later models where feedback and modifications are made to improve instructional materials. So this was where Skinner pioneered the use of teaching machine for program learning. So this technology was later used for adaptive learning. Next one, in 1950s, it began the creation of computer-assisted instruction, or the CAI. In the 1950s, computer-assisted instruction is an interactive instructional technique whereby a computer is used to present the instructional materials and monitoring the learning that takes place. The CAI uses a combination of text, graphics, sound, and video to improve the learning process. The computer has many purposes in the classroom, and it can be utilized to help a student in all areas of the curriculum. So, the picture in the left side, these are the examples um, of the utilization of the computer-assisted instruction. Next, in the 1960s, it is the beginning of the systematic instructional design models based on learning theories. So the first learning theories or instructional design model was the implementation of the behavioral objectives. This was by Robert Maber, who suggested that objectives of learning needs to be specific in terms of students' behavior, what the learner will be able to do when he has mastered the objectives. Second is the criterion reference testing. This was proposed by Robert Glaser, which introduced the criterion reference measures would test the individual's behavior in relation to an objective standard. Students are tested to verify if they have mastered a learning objective. The third one is in 1965, Robert Gagne and the condition of learning. So the condition of learning involves the internal and the external conditions. So wherein the internal conditions are the capabilities that already exist in a learner before any learnings begin. The external condition are the includes different stimulus that exist outside the learner. In the fourth one, in 1967, is the start of formative assessment. After analyzing the weaknesses of training material, Michael Scriven suggested the need of formative assessment to try out instructional materials with learners and revise accordingly before declaring them finalized. Next one in the 1960s is the creation of the media, the start of public broadcasting for instructional education. So the instructional media in the 1960s, the first broadcasting of the Sesame Street by PBS was on November 10, 1969. So in 1970s to 1980s, this is the emergence of the instructional design model. So first one in 1971, we have the Gerlach and Ellie instructional design model, which clearly defines teaching goals and methods of reaching each of the desired learning outcomes. Another one is the Kemp model, the circular 9 core interdependent elements, flexible and open to ongoing revisions. The third one is the Gagne and Briggs information processing theory, and the emergence of instructional design models by Dick and Carey. So in the 1980s to 1990s, computers as instructional devices are used in over 40% of elementary schools and over 75% of secondary institutions. Instructional Technology Foundations Gagne Editor, page 38. So this one is the widespread use of a personal computer in learning institution. So in the 1980s, mostly students or schools have already adopted computers in their instruction. So in 1990 to 2000, it was the creation of the World Wide Web as an online learning tool, with hypertext and hypermedia being recognized as good tools for learning. With this came a great increase in the availability of information from a personal computer and an online connection. In 1994, there is also the expansion of distance and collaborative learning. In 1994, the Association for Educational Communications and Technology, the publication of instructional technology, provides a definition of instructional technology. Next one, in the 21st century and the technology revolution, there is huge increase in online learning in K-12, higher education and business, industry, and the military. Development of online learning, advancement of technology to provide realistic experiences and simulations. In 2008, the Association for Educational Communications and Technology changed the definition of educational technology to the study and ethical practice of facilitating learning and improving performance by creating, using, and managing appropriate technological processes and resources. So, next is 2018 to present. Welcome to the Learning Anywhere, Anytime Social Revolution. So, in this part of instructional history, the Instructional Design 2.0 utilizes social media to facilitate learning. Increase in the use of non-instructional spaces for learning in schools, higher education, business, and industry. Importance of social media for collaborative learning and authentic learning experience. Devices include smartphones, tablets, laptops, personal computers, where formal and informal learning takes place anywhere, anytime. So this is the current um, social revolution that we have, wherein we can learn even if we're at home, or we can do distance learning, or we can teach even if we're at home. So this is the big advantage of using the internet as of this time. Okay, so there are also roles of instructional materials in teaching and learning. So instructional materials are important in every classroom for a variety of reasons. Here are some of the 5 most important roles of instructional materials in teaching and learning. The first one, instructional materials provide a structure for learning. So when used properly, these instructional materials can provide a framework that helps students learn more effectively. By having a specific plan and set of materials to follow, students can stay on track and avoid getting overwhelmed or lost in the material. So these instructional materials gives confidence to teachers. This gives them frameworks to follow. So it would be easier for them to teach because there is already structures for learning. The second one is the instructional materials can help make content more engaging. So let's face it, not all content is equally interesting or exciting, but when done well, instructional materials can help to make even the driest topics more engaging for students. So with the use of these instructional materials, it can make boring topics more engaging. So we can engage our students, we can let them cooperate, even though we can't deny the fact that there are boring subjects. So instructional materials can help it out. The third one is good instructional materials will capture students' attention. So good instructional materials will include activities, illustrations, and other elements that capture students' attention and help them to better understand and retain the information presented. In addition, using various types of instructional materials can keep students from getting bored with the material or feeling like they're just going through the motions in class. So, good instructional materials, which is highly subjective, so it will cater the attention of the students, it will capture the attention. But if you have to choose your instructional materials well so that it will not overwhelm your students. Next, instructional materials can save time for both teachers and students. So if you choose your instructional materials well, there's already a framework, so you already know what are the things you need to do, and everything is already aligned, and everything is already planned into your instructional materials. So it would be easier for you to teach that subject or that lesson. So when teachers have quality instructional resources at their disposal, they can spend less time preparing lessons and more time for actual teaching. Likewise, students can spend less time searching for information or completing busy work tasks and more time engaged in meaningful learning experiences. So the last one is instructional resources level the playing field among learners. So students who have access to quality instructional resources often have advantage over those who do not. This is especially true when it comes to struggling learners or those with special needs. Good instructional materials can provide these groups of students with additional support that might not otherwise receive. So when all students have access to properly designed instructional resources, however, this leveling effect takes place, resulting in a fairer educational experience for all involved. So before I end this discussion, let me just leave you with a quote. So if a child can't learn the way we teach, maybe we should teach them the way they learn. So that's all for my report. Thank you so much for listening. God bless.